All that matters in business.
Hi there, and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on Dublin City FM 103.2. Each week we have an expert from the world of business sharing their knowledge, insights and tips to help you reduce costs, increase profits and drive efficiencies. If there's a topic that you would like covered, or if you feel that you could make a contribution, please email me at yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie, and perhaps we'll be sitting here chatting one day soon. Today's guest is the managing partner of HLB Sheehan Quinn, a mid-tier accounts and advisory firm based in Sandyford. His team provide professional services and strategic advice to a broad range of clients, and they focus on owner-managed and businesses trading internationally both in and out of Ireland. I'm delighted to welcome Mark Butler to the You and Your Business studio. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Alec. Great
Listen,
to be here.
Fantastic. We're talking about finance, and I don't think we can talk about it without starting with the B word, Brexit. I know people are sick of hearing it, but it's always great to get a different perspective on it. Let's just talk about Brexit and how it's affecting your clients and what's happening in the world out there.
Yeah, sure. I think, Alec, that large business have a Brexit. They have been through the process and they have the planning done and have the resources and the manpower to be able to do that. Where, in my experience, mid-tier business is really only now starting to take on board what they need to do in order to be ready for Brexit.
It seems to be, I was talking to John McGrain just recently of the British Irish Chamber, and that sort of message seems to be coming through clear and loud, that the larger firms are generally fairly well prepared, but as you identified, the mid-tier, that's where the real challenge is. What sort of sectors are you seeing, for example, in your line of business? What sort of sectors are you working with, and what's happening there?
If you look at what's happening from our international side, from UK business, which is now, because even in the UK, I think mid-tier business is only really starting to look at the effect of Brexit and what it might do to their business. And where the type of businesses that we're helping are those that need EU licensing. So,
oh, wow.
Such as cosmetics. I believe the cosmetics that you might buy has to have a stamp on it,
right,
that it's registered in the EU and an EU address, or chemical. The chemical licensing. So those type of entities which might be manufacturing in the UK, and a lot of their product might even go to Asia, but they need EU licensing as well. So now they're starting to look at Ireland and say, well, is Ireland the place, which normally it is the place where I should house that EU licensing?
That certainly provides many challenges and also a huge cost in terms of packaging and repackaging and things that need to be done. So you're working with these firms, sort of advising them on setting up, say, in Ireland, and how. Why would people pick, sort of, say, Dublin as opposed to maybe Frankfurt or somewhere else to set up their business if they're coming in from the UK?
Yeah, I think as this type of business looks closer at it, Dublin is. Comes out normally as the primary home or the best place to set up a business, because our laws are much the same. How you set up a company is very similar and much the same. They can understand the cost structures, language, obviously, and because of our close ties with UK business, they can understand it, and they can very quickly start seeing the advantages of setting up here.
I suppose I better be very careful while it is Dublin City FM. It does go out to quite a bit of the country, so we are including the rest of the country when we talk about Dublin and Ireland. the whole of Ireland doesn't revolve around Dublin, but what we're seeing is sort of huge things happening. For example, I was listening this morning, and there was about 190 billion has come to Dublin assets from Barclays Bank. So there's a real sign, and there's also about 6,000 jobs gone from Nissan as well. So I think the UK are in for a real shocker if.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's probably where the opportunity is for Irish business. Like, another example is Salesforce, taking Dublin as their hub for the new 1,500 jobs, and that's all large business. But where that flows down, because there's lots of SMEs and mid-tier businesses servicing from that, and there'll be lots of jobs grown out of it. So from that perspective, there will be opportunities.
Yeah, I think we tend to forget that we're hearing a lot of announcements of large companies announcing large numbers of jobs right throughout Ireland, not just in Dublin. But we tend to forget that the knock-on effect of that is to a lot of mid-tier to SME type businesses.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think technology, I think, is probably where there will be a growth opportunity, and I think that's what they're, at least people I talk to in the UK, that's where they see the challenge, and that's where they see the jobs being lost as well, because Dublin is such a great place for technology business and for people to move here. It's easy and simple.
You were giving me an example. We were talking about something, just going back to the Brexit bit for a piece, and we were talking about supermarkets, and you gave me an example of a situation which fascinated me in terms of, while it works seamlessly at the moment with the way the border situation is, but however, the challenges it's now going to be faced.
Yeah, and I think that this is the first place where mid-tier business should start, or business should start looking at, is their supply chain. If they're selling out of Ireland or bringing in from the UK into Ireland. An example I was given during the week was raw materials coming from the north of Ireland, coming down across the border for manufacturing, going back across the border for packaging and fulfillment, and then going across to the UK for storage and distribution, and ending up back in Ireland and across Europe on supermarket shelves.
Wow.
So there's a fair few customs issues in there, and it's those type of issues. Who knows what the result of it will be or how you solve it? But I think if you're involved in that supply chain, it's to understand it and understand the effects it might have.
I mean, on the face of it, it's a simple transaction. It might sound complicated, but when there's an open border situation, things just roll backwards and forwards and everything's fine. But now you're suddenly talking about going through customs on each side and how many times that happens across the different borders, and also the delays and the time effect on that, particularly if they were fresh goods or something like that. You've identified, and I think it's coming across from a lot of people I'm talking like yourselves who are experts in these sort of areas, we tend to be looking at this as an opportunity rather than putting a sort of dampener on it all.
Yeah, I think, isn't that the Irish business attitude? In most cases, we're resilient and agile, and business will find a way of sorting out the problems, and it's to find the opportunities that might be there too, while understanding what the issues are.
I think you've identified something very important there in terms of talking about the supply chain. Have you any other examples that you can talk about supply chain? Or
yeah, I think food is where the food and is where the supply chain challenges really are. I think that's where a lot of our exports, etc., to the UK are around that food piece, and it's that supply chain of fast moving goods that is where the key challenges are.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, we're watching the politics in the background, but as we know, that business generally finds its own way to solve problems because it has to. And it will eventually, whenever that happens. But it's interesting. Again, I'm delighted to hear that it's an opportunity for Irish businesses to, take a lead and make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, and I think it's Irish business should look at the supports and the resources that are there, and like Enterprise Ireland has some excellent resources that are there in order to assist businesses with understanding customs and training, etc., around that, but lots of grants and supports to assist businesses with the challenges and getting to understand them.
So I suppose what you're saying is people have been sitting on the fence a bit. It's time maybe they started being a bit more proactive in checking out what is available in terms of grants, and also looking up other resources like maybe the British Irish Chamber website and things like that.
Absolutely.
And certainly talking to people like yourself,
Yeah, now's the time to take the advice and move on it.
Yeah. No, it's grand. Listen, if you're joining us, you are now listening to me, Alec Drew, on Dublin City 103.2 FM, where my studio guest is Mark Butler of HLB Sheehan Quinn, sharing his knowledge on the important subject of finance for business. I suppose let's leave Brexit there for a minute before we lose our audience altogether. I think they're all Brexited out of it. We look back at this in years to come and think, my goodness, it's like Y2K again. We tend to forget about that in the world that you're in of finance and accountancy, that many mid-tier business like yourself have sometimes a number of niches, and I know you've one interesting niche that you focus on, which is around the veterinary world.
Yes, yes. So yeah, I think you find it for any advisor now that sectoral expertise is really important, because what clients need is real depth and understanding of the business that they operate in, and they need you to have that in order to be able to advise them properly. And the veterinary world and veterinary practices is one such specialist expertise that we focus on.
Tell me a bit about that. It seems like, I suppose we all tend to think of fluffy little animals and seeing that friendly face that we bring that sad pooch to. But it's more than that. It's a real business.
Absolutely. And there is a where we had a number of veterinary clients, and we could see that they had a challenge with knowing where the business information that was available and what was happening in their sector. So we seen the opportunity to bring that information together, and we started to do a survey of the veterinary sector in Ireland. So then by getting that specialist knowledge and being able to tie a lot of numbers together, we could then look at, say, a number of practices, 40 or 50 practices, and be able to feed information back to them about what the average labour rates were, etc., which information that was not available to them otherwise.
And you do, if I'm not mistaken, produce a sort of annual report in terms of the veterinary world. And
we do. We survey every veterinary practice in the country. The survey goes out, and then we our marketing team we pull that together, and we send the results of it to each veterinary practice.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't tend to think of specialised accountancy practices in niche. We might think of it in maybe the top 5 and that, but not necessarily in mid-tier. So I think it's important. I think the message you're giving there is, seek out the practice that fits your particular marketplace best.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the veterinary world has challenges around business structuring and how they should structure their business for growth. They have challenges around technology. They have challenges around labour and heading towards full employment, etc. Brexit is a challenge or an opportunity, and around drug supply, etc. So we're the special advisors in that sector who can help.
If I'm not mistaken, there's been a sort of seismic changes in the sort of veterinary world in the UK, which seem to be maybe migrating the way across here.
There is, absolutely. So there's about 65% of veterinary practices in the UK are owned by groups or corporate groups, as they're referred to in the veterinary world, where in a lot of cases you wouldn't know when you bring your dog to the vet who the owner is behind it, but they have bought a lot of these veterinary practices with a view to that the vet focuses on their core delivery of primary care, and they look after all of the back end business side of it, if you like. And there's some of those entities in the UK. They're huge. There's one that has 1,000 veterinary practices across Europe. Another with 500. Wow. And they've started to invest in Ireland. They've started to look at Ireland. So that's been a seismic change in succession planning and opportunities for veterinary practices to change hands that wouldn't have been there before.
And it certainly requires some expert advice around that, because if I'm not mistaken, there are some challenges around the legacy structures that are in Ireland that I won't drag you down the controversial route, the legal side. But you might give our listeners just a flavour of sort of what's happening in that world.
Yeah, there was uncertainty, let's say, for quite a number of years, who could own a veterinary practice and what type of business structure that they could be owned in, and that has opened up somewhat, even controversially perhaps in some ways, and we certainly help advise on that, both for vets, because not every veterinary practice will be owned by a corporate. A lot of them will stay, as the majority I think will stay as independently owned Irish businesses. So with looking at that legislative side and those issues, we advise individuals buying into veterinary practice and selling them as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because like veterinary practice, like so many other businesses, succession planning is something that we don't see happening as much as it should be in the world. I know you are involved in that to an extent.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And it's like a lot of business where people just leave it too late or don't think about succession planning. And usually it's when they want to retire that they start then thinking about what am I going to do with the business, which of course in most cases is far too late.
And there are obviously taxation implications around that.
Absolutely. It can make a big difference to retirement or what you end up with from a net perspective around the various reliefs that are there and how you structure it. So the tax is one side of it, but on the advisory side of it, sometimes it can be the difference between business survival.
Wow.
And whether you plan it properly.
I mean, I think it's hopefully it's more historical, but it's still happening. I know that there are people who literally finish their days, they can't do the business anymore and have to walk out and close the door behind them and leave a valuable asset. Well, it was a valuable asset at one time. It was a valuable asset, but it's no longer so, and just have to leave it there behind them.
Exactly. And that happened with, if on the subject of veterinary practices, there are a number of examples of that, and happened all the time.
Right, and probably still happening.
And still happening, yes.
It's terrible to think that people have invested all their lives in a passionate project and then suddenly have to close it down without reaping the benefits of a retirement program out of it.
Yeah. So there's exciting times in the veterinary world because of the new practices opening and those opportunities, and then more opportunities opening for practices to be able to continue, whether that's in a corporate ownership world or otherwise, because of the new ways that vets can structure their business.
Yeah, I love that. Opportunities everywhere. I suppose you mentioned briefly just as we're starting, and I kind of just moved away and bring you back to let's just talk about technology. I mean, I'm talking. Technology is all around us, and sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees of what's of value and what isn't. But technology has a major change in the way you do business and the way your clients, or you're steering your clients to do business.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the accountancy world has been disrupted and is continuing to be disrupted. Where if you think of a normal business where maybe it's the box of records arrive or a data set which is with incomplete records, etc., and it goes into the accountant's office and it comes back perhaps a number of months later or weeks later with queries, and finally the final accounts are out and you know what profit you made for the previous year, and you could be halfway through your current year,
right? And
that was because the technology wasn't there. Where the technology there now is fantastic. As in, if I give the example, let's say of a hotel, where if you think the purchase invoices, they'd have thousands of invoices in a year, and they might have 2 people employed in order to manage that. Where now with the technology that's there, that can all be automated, where the invoices are processed and there, and instead of a business where 6 months after their year end they know what profit they make, now within 3 weeks after the year end, me as the business advisor can meet the hotel owners with information and accounts to plan the next year and look at what their plans are for the next year with real information. So it's as advisors and accountants, it's really exciting, the opportunities that technology is bringing when you embrace it.
If you're just joining us here, you're listening to me, Alec Drew, on Dublin City 103.2 FM, where my studio guest is Mark Butler of HLB Sheehan Quinn, sharing his knowledge on the important subject of finance for business. We were just talking about technology and how we've moved away from the business owner dragging his box of records and dockets into an accountancy practice and hoping to hear that he's made a profit for the year. Although I hear it's still going on, and I'm sure there's some practices still having to manage that on behalf of clients.
Yeah, absolutely. But and it's really, I think it's up to us as a profession in order to bring that technology to our clients and to show them what it can do and how it can empower them with their business. So it's like if a business owner is out today on and puts fuel in their car, into their business car, they can take a photograph of the receipt and press a button, and it automatically goes into the accounting system, rather than trying to find that expense in 3 months' time.
Yeah, and people tend to forget that technology is that at hand, and particularly for people like sales reps who I know from previous years in business hate all of the form filling, and they're the worst people to get records of, even though it's to their detriment that they don't have all of this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a much better way of capturing the information in live. And the entrepreneurs now expect live information, expect things to happen immediately and to have it. And this technology gives advisors and accountants the tools to be able to assist the entrepreneurs of today and tomorrow.
I think certainly there's been a huge change in terms of the approach from the finance and accountancy world. There was a time they would have been overly protective about all sorts of work that they might be taking in, but I think based on what you're saying now, there's a real sort of let me help you find the technology that will take all the donkey work out, rather than paying us for it, because quite honestly we don't want to be doing it. We will do it and charge you, but why should you pay for that? We'd prefer to give you more strategic advice.
Yeah, and it's to help them with that, and it gives us the information to be able to get to the end result quicker in order to assist them in growing their businesses and becoming more profitable. Which is why I became an accountant, and I believe most people become an accountant is to help business owners.
Yeah, and it's more around the advice. I mean, you want the numbers as opposed to all the bits that make up the numbers.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason people should be doing it that way these days anyway.
No, there's not. And the cost of it is actually, it doesn't bring any more cost to a business, and it should be that an accountant can use the fees from that in order to give advice rather than crunching the numbers.
Yeah, makes sense. Really does make sense. We were talking about which Ireland is very lucky to have, and what we've got with foreign direct investment happening here. Now, I know certainly the large corporates are sort of well catered for in that world, but I know you're involved in terms from like the UK and US. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so as part of our international network, HLB International, we seen the opportunity, as you say, where the large multinationals are well looked after from an advisory perspective on their FDI or their international business. And we seen the opportunity to help US and UK businesses at a mid-tier level who are looking at internationalizing. And it's a specialist sector that we operate in. So, we have a US desk and we have a UK desk in our office. And one example I give of the US desk, we ran a blog on US residents living in the EU and what their responsibilities are from filing US tax returns.
All right.
Very, very exciting stuff, Alec. But it brings opportunities, and individuals like that then have a mid-tier outlet to go with the expertise in order to deal with that specialist knowledge. And again, the likes of the UK businesses, whether they're in cosmetics or chemicals or whatever it might be, who are now running to try and do something for Brexit, there's, as a mid-tier business, we're well able and capable of servicing them.
Yeah, and I think that's important, that people tend to forget their natural instinct is to go to maybe one of the top five, who probably are up to their tonsils at the moment in dealing with multinationals, and tend to forget that there is a mid-tier accountancy world out there that can well cater for their particular needs and has the expertise in-house.
In-house, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
No, that's fantastic. I also know you do a bit of a consultancy for other accountancy practices, which is kind of a bit strange in the sense, but again, I suppose this is a changing world where everybody's not overly protective about the patch that they're on, but prepared to let knowledge be shared.
Yeah, and it's about offering those specialist services. So we offer specialist tax consulting services, where we have tax advisors, and which we recently recruited a tax lawyer.
Right.
And we provide consulting services to businesses, particularly around if they're looking to restructure their business, maybe incentivize staff, succession planning, or to leverage for growth, etc. And they need to restructure their business to do that. And usually, from a tax perspective, that's fairly complex, and you have to be careful with it. So we've a specialist tax consultancy business which looks after that. So we get businesses in that we will do certain things for, and then they go back to their accountant, who they have their ongoing business relationship with, and we provide that to some smaller accountancy practices as well for their clients.
Yeah, fantastic. I suppose as we're coming to the end of the show here, what challenges have you got in your business? I mean, we all have challenges for 2019, but what have you got in your business that...
It's definitely the labour shortages. We're heading back towards full employment. It's the challenges are finding people and finding accountants. I think we've what's been found is that the people studying accountancy has also decreased. So there's less people there. Listen, we have roles in Dublin and in our Wexford office across. We're looking for digital media executives, so wider than accountants, and tax consultants and accountants as well.
Oh, there's some free advertising. But anyway, listen, I'd love to thank Mark Butler for being here in the studio on You and Your Business. HLBSheeandQuinn.ie, I believe, is the website for those who want to find out more. Yeah. Okay, I mean, that's all we've time for today. A special thanks to my guest, Mark Butler, for coming into the You and Your Business studio today. Thanks also to Darren on sound. Don't forget that you can contact the show by emailing yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie with your comments and suggestions.